Hi, everybody, and welcome to our very special Remembrance Day edition of Georgina Life. I'm Jennifer Anderson.
And I'm Joe Connors.
Coming up on the show today, we have a lot of information for you. It's a great show. You're not going to want to miss it. We have our cameras at Our Lady of the Lake School as they take in a visit from the Sutton Legion and one of its vets.
And we're going to speak with that vet, Reg Pits, a little bit further on.
We also have all of the footage from the York Region 5th Annual York Regional Police Remembrance Day Ceremony.
And we're also going to get a spotlight from the Georgina Military Museum of a great unveiling of artwork as well as some artifacts. And that's all coming up today. Now, the other person that I have yet to introduce who's going to be on the show today.
He's sitting right next to us.
Who's sitting right next to us. I would traditionally introduce him as Cousin Mike. He is Cousin Mike to me, but for the sake of today, we're going to call him Master Seaman Mike Wilson. Mike, thanks for joining us here.
Thanks for having me.
I know that you're a long way from home, but you're actually closer to home than you really ought to be. That's a little bit backwards, but makes sense.
It makes sense to me.
And little did you know that when you came home for a visit, you're on leave, came home for a visit with family and friends, that you'd be sitting on the couch at Georgina Life.
Yeah, never had an idea that was going to happen.
Well, we appreciate you joining us here today because it is a day to say thank you to those who are involved in the military, to remember, and I know it's an important day for you as well.
It is. Not only just being in the military, I've got family who were in World War II during the big wars, and one being in the infantry, one being in the armored division, and it's just important for me to remember, you know, the sacrifice that they made, and all the others who were in those wars. The ones who were injured, the ones who did make it home, the ones who never did come home. It's important to remember them.
I suppose when you talk about the family connection too, conversely, our Oma and Opa being in Canada was made possible by the liberation of Holland by the Canadian soldiers. So I know there's definitely both sides of that connection and that coin that both of us would speak to.
Yeah, for sure.
So, so I know that it's an interesting insight to have Remembrance Day both being the gratitude that comes from being able to exist, right? I think I'm speaking on your behalf, but I think we can both relate to that quite physically.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
Is it that family history that led you into a career in the military?
Maybe a little bit. It was actually more of a friend of mine who was he had joined the Army, and he was constantly bugging me, telling me, "Oh man, you would really enjoy this. You'd really enjoy this." And he kept telling me to look into it, and I looked into it and realized that Canada had a Navy, and realized there were some occupations in the Navy that I would really enjoy, and so I put my application in and signed up.
From there, it's been quite a while since that day, and you've been working ever since?
Yeah, 14 years ago. I put my application in, and I got accepted and joined in as a hull technician. It's the Navy's way of saying jack of all trades. We do welding, woodworking, plumbing, air conditioning repairs. We do damage control systems repair. We're helicopter crash rescue firefighters. We pretty much do a lot on the boat to make sure that that boat stays afloat and operational.
Over those 14 years, you've had some experiences doing different tours and different experiences that you've drawn on.
Yeah, I've been on 2 different tours. One back in 2005. We were in the Mediterranean on Operation Active Endeavour. Was the Canada's involvement in the war on terrorism, and again, just 2.5 years ago with Operation Artemis, where we were in the Persian Gulf doing the same.
And it was in the last one that you had the experience of intercepting some narcotics. I say some. That's very loose in a definition.
Yeah, we were the only one on the task force who was mandated for actually seizing drugs, and we had many communications of intel of vessels carrying narcotics, and So we seized a lot. In grand total, I think we had close to $500 million worth of drugs that were seized.
Wow.
So we had a nice way of disposing them as well.
Right. So now, because they need to be blown up at sea.
They did, yeah. We had first we were just cutting the bags and then disposing of them, and then we had members of the ship's company needed to do some demolition training, and we were ordered to combine disposal of the drugs with the demolitions training, and we decided to have a $500,000 worth of explosion out in the middle of the ocean.
Geez. And you know what? It's at the same point that saved those drugs from getting into the wrong hands and funding things that ought not to be funded.
Yeah.
Mike, we're running short on time here. Do you have any words of advice for anybody looking to join the military?
If you're really seeking an occupation in the military, I would just say just do the research and make sure it's what you want to do.
Right. And you are heading back to Halifax?
On Saturday. I'm heading back to work on Monday.
Right. Well, we thank you, not only for being here today, but for your many years of service.
Thank you very much.
All right. Coming up after the break, we are going to take a look at a video at Our Lady of the Lake. Stay tuned. Welcome back to our very special Remembrance Day edition of Georgina Life. Well, over the last week, veterans from the Sutton Legion have been visiting schools in Georgina to talk to students about their experiences. Our Lady of the Lake was one of the schools that was visited, and we had a chance to bring our cameras into the school to take a look.
Thank you everyone for coming today. So I'd like to introduce our guest speaker, Reg Pits, who's a veteran of World War II and served in our military for many, many years. So I'd like to raise a round of applause for Reg. And we had Reg Pits speaking to my grade 10 and grade 12 classes about Remembrance Day and why Remembrance Day should be really important for the students to learn about every year, and why it's really important not only in school but in the greater community as well.
As you know, we're coming up to Remembrance Day, which is November the 11th, and a lot of people say, well, how come it's on November the 11th? Well, if you look back in history, the First World War, where Canadians served, the armistice of the First World War was signed on the 11th day, the 11th month, and the 11th hour. I'm here talking to the students of Our Lady of the Lake High School. They're from grade 10, 11, and 12. I'll be talking to them primarily about Remembrance Day, what it means, and also about their educational standards that they must obtain if they're ever going to be successful in the future, and also the fact that they are, as individuals, the future of our country. There are 100,000 wounded, and the hundreds of thousands wounded, but there are 60 or 70,000 who never came home. Why do they volunteer to go into a situation where they know they may never come back? Well, they do this primarily to serve their country and to ensure that their children and their children's children and their grandchildren can live in a free society, as you do today.
What are each of your medals for?
This is a voluntary service medal for Korea in action. Primarily, the people want to know about my military career. And I explain to them that it is an honorable career, but it takes a lot of sacrifice, because if you're a member of the military and you're married, you spend an awful lot of your time away from your family. In my case, I would say in 49 years of service, I spent at least half of that time away from my family. I bring out fond memories, but I also bring with me some very sad memories. But that is part of military life.
Remembrance Day is very important for students to understand the sacrifices that our servicemen and women have given to our country. And I think they have to be reminded about it every year because I think we sometimes get a little too complacent. So it's really important for people like Reg to come in and speak with the students and remind them of the sacrifices that were given and that there are still people every day giving these sacrifices to our country so they can live a free and democratic life.
Remembrance Day means to me that we remember those who fought and sacrificed for the lives of others, going to other countries and fighting to secure their freedom from the Nazis or from Russia in the 70s. And I just think Remembrance Day means that we remember those who died and those who came back.
The sacrifice that they made, it means a lot. I mean, to me, it inspired me to go out and join the military as soon as I'm done school because I need to pay it forward like they did. Because if people don't continue to help and serve like they did in the past, we'll go to a stage where everything that other people did won't matter. And I can't stand to see that because the sacrifice they made was too great to just let it slide away.
Well, I'm hoping they will remember that Remembrance Day is to honor those who gave their lives so that they may sit and enjoy our free society here in Canada.
Wow. Well, we are very thrilled to have Reg Pits joining us in the studio now. Reg, thank you so much for being here with us.
My pleasure.
You have a military career that spans 50 years, 49 years?
49 years.
And that included all areas of the military.
Started off in the Army, then the Navy, then the Air Force. Finally, the Air Force, where I retired from in 1993.
Wow. And we are so impressed to see all of those kids sitting and watching and paying attention. And do you find that at every school?
I enjoy talking to the children immensely. They're very attentive to every word you have to say. And it depends on the age of the children you're talking to, how you continue your program and bring the fact of the remembrance program to their young lives.
Right.
They don't understand all of it, but they get what they need, and we will continue on doing this later as they get older.
Well, we have a lot more to talk to you about, and we will continue doing that right after the break. Stay tuned.
We're back and we're speaking with Reg Pits from the Sutton Royal Canadian Legion. Reg, before the break we were seeing a clip of you speaking with one of the local high schools, Our Lady of the Lake, and you had the opportunity to speak to students. You do that quite often, and you have the chance to connect with the students. Do you often get a lot of curious questions and things that you have to draw upon from your experiences?
It depends on the age level you're dealing with. Sometimes the questions you get, it's hard to answer them. You have to make up an answer because they want to know things that you don't really want to talk about, ever want to talk about. But with the older children, well, especially the people of the high school level, they are very, very interested in what you have to say. They listen and hang on to everything you have to say, especially when I come to the part discussing education. We go through the Remembrance Day program, what it's all about, and then at the end of the Remembrance Day program, and I express to them during that program, we are there to honor those who gave their lives willingly so that they may live in peace in Canada, this great country of ours. But then with the education, I go on to say that education is a must in order to be successful in life. And I consider myself an example of that, having joined the military first when I was 15. I hadn't completed my education, but I completed my education in the Navy. That is to the high school level only. And then when I transferred into the Air Force, I became involved in the nuclear organization, and I went on from there. I was commissioned and went all the way up the ladder as far as I could go. As a matter of fact, I could go no further. I became the director of nuclear biological chemical operations in the Canadian NORAD region headquarters here in Ontario in North Bay. But the students themselves, they are interested in furthering, especially those in the high schools want to continue on to university. A lot of them are having a difficult situation financially, getting to where they want to go, and we try to express to them about the military side of education, Royal Military College. If they apply even at an early age and get their grades up, then they can become members of the military organization as a cadet in university. Doesn't cost them a cent.
Right. And so promoting that as a way for furthering education for students through the Royal Military College and through the military in general is something that they can latch onto, look forward to, and be able to use as a tool.
That's right. And all they have to do when they complete their university education is give 5 years of service to pay back for having received that education, and they're home free. Mm-hmm. And the majority of them continue on into the service. Mm. They continue and make a career of the military, and they're there for you, they're there for everyone to protect our way of life.
It's so important to have veterans go into the school and talk about their experiences and the history of this country.
Oh,
but
yes.
This November 11th is an important day as well. Why is it so important to you?
Well, a lot of people come up to me and they say, thank you for your service. And my own personal feeling is Remembrance Day is there to remember those who gave their lives over the First and Second World Wars, the Korean War, the wars in Afghanistan, and the other wars that are small wars that are going on throughout the world today, where our people are involved, like even the war in Kosovo. Mm-hmm. We have people that are suffering from that war itself. They were not active, but they were there. And being there, they observed the atrocities that took place. Mm-hmm. This is something that is very, very, very hard to deal with when you come back to civilization, shall we say. Mm-hmm.
So it is it's important.
It is extremely important. And we have as an emblem the poppy. The poppy is red and black. The red denotes the blood that those who served gave during the many wars. The black is for those who died during the many wars we were involved in.
We just want to say thank you for being here with us today and for telling your story.
It's my pleasure, and I'll be doing it as long as I can. Who knows how long at this stage in my life.
Well, thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right, stay tuned. There's more to come. right after this. Welcome back, everyone, to Georgina Life. Well, early on in November, there was a First Nations plaque ceremony that took place at the Sutton Cenotaph on High Street in Sutton. And we were very fortunate to be a part of that ceremony. So we have some video for you to take a look at.
Thank you to the Colored Party for joining us here today and all the veterans. In 2010, a group of community members from Georgina Island, Rama, and Beausoleil First Nations began meeting to discuss the upcoming bicentennial commemorations for the War of 1812. The group decided to begin meeting on a regular basis to plan a series of projects to honor the contribution made by the Chippewas of Lakes Huron and Simcoe in support of the British during the conflict.
We've come together to install the plaque here near the Cenotaph in Sutton so that people can read about it and understand it, and it's a large piece of it is public awareness and education.
And when we speak of the Chippewa, that commitment is to this country and to the people here and to our government here is one that has been long-standing. It was there in the War of 1812. It has been seen since.
Brian Charles and Suzanne Howes, who were the founding members of the War of 1812 Committee and who did the work that saw the plaque come to be, to do the unveiling of the plaque.
That we started getting out there, and people need to know the information of how much our people contributed, especially to the War of 1812 and a lot of the wars that Peter Van Loon spoke about, MP. Most of our band members always enlisted in the war, World War I and World War II from the First Nations, so our people have always been there to support Canada.
Well, certainly it's the town's honor to have this plaque in our community, recognizing the efforts of the natives back in the War of 1812, and to have it at the Cenotaph, so it's here when we do all of our official November 11th ceremonies, recognizing the commitment and the dedication of all those that have served for this country.
Definitely drawing that connection, even for the War of 1812, when we talk about that connection going forward to the First and Second World Wars, the First Nations were there, and we're going to learn about that a little bit later on in the show. That'll be with Sid, but that's all coming up later on Georgina Life.
To Georgina Life as we continue to honor and remember for our Remembrance Day celebrations here today. Last Friday there was the 5th annual Remembrance Day ceremony at York Regional Police 3 District. We took our cameras over there to be a part of the ceremony. Let's take a look.
Today we pause our busy lives to remember the sacrifice of Canada's fallen. We are very fortunate to live in a peaceful and secure Canada in 2015. We can credit this to the sacrifice of those that served before us.
We are here today at 3 District for the 5th annual Remembrance Day Ceremony. I'm joined now by Inspector Gary Miner. Gary, thank you so much for having us here today, having us be a part of this celebration. Tell us what's happening here.
Well, you've already hit the nail on the head. It is our 5th annual Remembrance Service, and it's getting bigger and bigger each year, which is the plan to cause the act of remembrance through remembering people in our community, and not just the fallen, but the ones that came back from overseas or served in conflict or just served in the military and then still became productive members of the community. And so we're honoring those here today. This is a recognition stone that was a huge pilot project back, as the Chief said, in 2009. It was funded through monies that were donated, and it's evolved to where we are today with putting in recognition markers for police officers that served within the York region, pre-1971, even after 1971, in these little hamlet police services where they came back from the war and they used their knowledge, skills, and abilities from what they learned, either leadership or communications or transport, and they put those skills to work forming police services in communities. And then when it amalgamated into York Regional Police, the deck was shuffled and they moved around the region. And as I said in my speech, of the 9 names that we unveiled today, 10 names actually, I knew 9 of them. I had contact with 9 of them. Fred Mason was not one that I had contact with, but certainly a man that had endured quite a lot during the Second World War as a prisoner of war. And, there's a lot to be said for a man that contributed to his community the way he did after what he endured.
I was moved so many, many times and so proud of this group of men who really, they were the first Canadians to be in the war, in the Second World War. I mean, the European one, there were no Canadians had gone to yet, and they were the first to be sent over. They were sent over with very little supplies and ammunition, and they defended the Japanese for it was 3 weeks, I believe it was, that they said, and then they just knew that they couldn't keep it up, so they had to surrender, and then life became hell. And that's what he said it was. And he then started to talk about it, and he gave me books to read, and I read the books and talked to the men. And even while they were there on this tour that we were there, they went to separate places where they had fought, and they would go, well, if you go up there, there's a bunker. And sure enough, you go up there, and the bunker was still there. They knew exactly where they had been, but the camaraderie between all of them is just so much. There's now, I think, if there's 30 living, that's it. There was, over 2,000 went, and I think it was just a little over 1,000 came back. But it really was a war that it was never publicized. I don't know about you in school, but I was never told anything about it, and it's because we lost.
What I knew of him and his military experience, of just how proud he was. It was something he carried through his whole life. He was always interested in books on the military and the Navy and movies and honoring veterans. And Remembrance Day was very important to him as well. So that's what I know of, and I've carried that into my life as well. It's just that honoring of the veterans and how important they are and their value in society, and hoping that, as days go on, everybody will keep that remembrance going, as it was stressed so much here today. It's just we do have to keep remembering that, and hopefully that never stops.
Well, unfortunately, because of the weather on Friday, a lot of the ceremony was moved into 3 District. You saw some footage there where a lot of folks had to go inside and sit. But certainly we are very honored to have that monument at 3 District as part of the entire York Regional Police Association. So.
And definitely a moment when you see everybody in the honor guard there in the inclement weather, standing guard and standing strong, and it just very powerful.
Powerful ceremonies, and we have so many of them in Georgina to be a part of,
right.
And I think it's important for everybody to be a part of them. Not just for a show like one we're doing today, but to take the time to go to the parades, the ceremonies, because they're happening every year.
And the run of the gambit from the school assemblies to you know, the large-scale parades, very powerful, very moving, and that's exactly what Remembrance Day really is about.
We are also very fortunate to have a military museum right here in Georgina, and we have the Vice President joining us right after the break.
Surrounding Remembrance Day, the Georgina Military Museum, as archivers, collectors of artifacts, history lovers, and spreaders of, you know, the collective knowledge of the Canadian military and its history. These are very busy days for you. Sid Giddings, thanks so much for joining us here. I know that you are a busy person. To have this collection, this is just a small, tiny portion of what the Georgina Military Museum has.
Correct.
And you're able to join us here today and kind of shed some light on what you've brought with you today.
Well, today I brought a picture, or copies of a picture that was donated to us by Henk Dijkman, a Dutchman, of an experience he had when he was 11 years old.
Now, before we show that picture, we have to go back a little bit and talk about the history leading up to it.
The history leading up to that, on the April the 4th, 1944, the Stormont and Glengarry Highlanders were attacking a little town called Leaston. And during the attack, they come upon a small school, a residential school, and there was some fatalities in the backfield behind the school. And Henk Dijkman, during this battle, him and his family, he was 11 years old, was going to go into the basement. And the last German soldier to leave that school said to them, "Don't go in the basement, because the Canadian soldiers have flamethrowers, and if the building catches fire, you won't get out, so please don't go in the basement." And that German soldier then left. So the father said, "Well, we have to make ourselves known that there's civilians in here." So he went to the back door with something white, and he put the children in front of him and his wife, opened the door, and shouted out that the Germans were gone. So, Canadian soldier got from his small armored vehicle, which was a flamethrower, and he walked towards the building. And when you see the picture, there is a long, narrow building in the center of the picture, and at the end of that picture is the living quarters.
So
we're able to take a look at that right now.
Right there, right in the center, you see there's a long, narrow, when it pulls out, right next to that windmill there, to the right-hand side, that was the residence. And the first Canadian soldier that walked up to that building and came in the back door and out the front door and liberated that family was none other than a 19-year-old Mr. Lloyd Crate, who became the operator of Crate's Marina in Keswick. So that is quite a historical picture. And the reason that came into being is because Henk, who was 11 years old, in his years later, came to Ontario. He became a minister. He was a reverend. One of his part-time jobs was the minister at Guelph Penitentiary. Another gentleman worked there as a part-time job, was an artist called Arend Newland. And he is quite well known as an artist and a sculptor. He has a studio in Tobermory. Anyways, maybe about 30 years ago, they parted company. And Arend said to Henk, "I would like to give you a gift. I want to paint your 11-year-old memory to canvas of the war."
Wow. And that is how the canvas came to be.
Exactly.
And also, because of Lloyd Craig, how it came to be in Georgina.
Exactly.
Well, coming up after the break, we're going to learn a little more about that canvas and how you can take a look at it.
We're back with Sid Giddings from the Georgina Military Museum, and before the break we were chatting about the unveiling of a painting at the Georgina Military Museum by Armin Lulin.
Hank Dyckman.
Hank Dyckman is the...
And Arend Newland was the artist.
Thank you. So the painting that's there is going to be on display.
It's permanent display at the museum. It was gifted to the museum by Hank. Mm-hmm. Hank and Arend will be at the museum today, the 11th of November, from probably 12 to 1, if anyone wants to visit. And quickly, Hank, some years ago, he campaigned the local government of Leiston, which had grown, and a subdivision was built over the battlefield. And there was 11 Canadians died in that battlefield. And he canvassed the local government there, and he eventually got 10 streets and 1 bridge named after those 11 casualties.
Wow.
To be a permanent memorial to them. Wonderful. And also that book there.
This one here.
This one here. This book, he took the time to make this booklet up, and he searched out all the living relatives of those 11 casualties, and this details everything of that battle and the days prior and after and the movement of the troops. And he gave those all to the family of those 11 casualties. The man was he's a tremendous man, dedicated man. As I say, if anyone wants to meet him, he'll be at the museum today on the 11th. From 12 till 1 or so.
You have as well a collection of photos, and there's an article here which is drawing the connection between the Chippewas of Georgina and their commitment to volunteering for World War I and World War II.
Correct. And it's something I feel quite passionate about, and we have a display on the Chippewas at the museum which I feel doesn't do the Chippewas justice, and we're going to be working on that this winter. And a lot of people don't realize that in both World Wars, every single man that was healthy enough, was old enough, and young enough that fell in that band, it was a 100% volunteer. Nobody backed out.
Wow.
Nobody. And I think that's something we all should be proud of in Georgina, that those people committed to the country in such a manner as that. And we will demonstrate that on our new display at the museum through the winter.
You've brought a lot of pictures today.
Yes.
These are people who lived in Georgina.
They all from the band, yes, they're all from the band. And we got Thomas Big Canoe.
This is from, just looking here, November 5th, 1999.
Yes, this was a commemoration. He died in the battle. And this was made up by Thomas Jr. And it commemorates his uncle and members of the band during the war. And this was at the school on the island. And he donated it to us, and it's in our display. I took it down for today.
Wonderful. There are opportunities for folks to come over to the Military Museum and take a look around.
Yes, on the weekends we're open 10 till 4, and we're open on the long weekends 11 till 3, and then of course we're open today 10 till 3 on Remembrance Day.
And end of November you close for the season.
Correct.
Right. Very good. Well, thank you. I know it's a busy time, and you were here with us, so we really appreciate it.
It's our pleasure from the museum.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Stay tuned. There's more. very emotional today.
And certainly, well, it comes with the territory. I think that's a safe statement. I gotta say, after watching, running the gambit from, we've had the school assembly, the footage of that. We were talking earlier this week about the parades, and then from the Georgina Military Museum, artifacts and people spanning from Reg Pits to my own cousin Mike, seeing people young and old and everybody remembering. Really, I think it's very safe to say Georgina remembers, and I'm proud to say that, and that we do a very passionate job of remembering in this town.
Yeah, it kind of brings you back, right? When you see the daily, what becomes a nuisance or an irritation or we are just so lucky, to be a part of a great community and a great country, and we're sweating the small stuff when really life is good.
Life is good, and this is the day to remember that. So.
Very good. All right. Well, we hope that you have enjoyed our special Georgina Life here today as we remember and we honor those currently serving and that have served in the war. Thanks so much for watching.
And stay golden, Georgina.